tech neck. So take it away, Laura.
Thanks so much, Bill. It is wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm always excited to come, as you will. If you haven't heard me speak before, I am always excited to share my thoughts around different ways that we can really optimize our health and improve how we feel. And this particular topic, tech neck, I don't think it gets enough airtime yet. But it's a big thing that affects people of all ages, but in particular, as we hit our 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, centenarians, our neck tends to be maybe a little less forgiving as far as the positions that we ask it to go into. So that is what we're going to talk about tonight, and I'll elaborate a lot more on that. Because of the way that we're going to run this session tonight, if you've got a question as we go through, I would encourage you to just type it into the chat. If you're watching this live, if you're watching it recorded, sorry you couldn't join us, but I can't answer your question. But if you're joining me live tonight, then please pop it into the chat. And I may not address it as I'm going through the presentation, but I'll be sure to go through all of the questions once we get to the end of the presentation. And Bill, if there's anything that comes up there that you really feel you need to stop me for, then feel free to interrupt. And
I'm here all ears and ready to help in any way I can, Laura.
Amazing. Thank you so much. All right, so let's get going. Tech neck. Before we get too deep into it, just a little bit about me. So again, I am a registered physiotherapist. I am in my 20th year of practice, which just seems crazy when I think about it, but it is the truth. And from a background perspective as a physio, I hold the highest credentials recognized in Canada for both hands-on treatment or orthopedic physiotherapy and also sport physiotherapy. And with my work in those areas over about a decade here in Halifax, I was really inspired to take that kind of approach of orthopedic and sport medicine or sport physiotherapy and bring it to masters athletes and older adults to really optimize our quality of life as we age. And so I opened Zoomers Physiotherapy and Health Solutions in 2018 here in Halifax to bring both high quality health and also fitness services to adults that, again, help support active, healthy lifestyles. And this little train of people are my people. So that's me at the front there, my daughter Hazel, my son Oscar, and my husband Gord, as we're off on a walk down to the beach, one of our favorite things to do in the summer, and one of the ways that we live a healthy lifestyle together. All right. So as we talk about tech neck today, enough about me, I'm hoping that when we get to the end of today's session, you really have a better understanding of how technology can really cause both neck and shoulder pain, that you've got some ideas on how you can take steps to prevent tech neck from causing you pain, and that you feel confident in starting some gentle exercises that can stretch and strengthen the affected muscles to both prevent and to treat tech neck. The good news about tech neck is that there are lots of things we can do about it. The trick is we have to know them and then we have to do them. So hopefully after today, you're feeling a bit more confident with that knowledge, and you feel like this was an hour worthwhile. So starting off with, what is tech neck? You may be a term that you've heard of before, might not be, but the tech obviously comes from technology. And where it came from is the fact that when we engage with technology, particularly with things like smartphones and tablets, we tend to hold our head in this forward position out of alignment with the body. So you can see on the bottom screen here how this can impact the forces, or how it changes the amount of force that our neck is under, the amount of pressure that our neck is under. As we move the head forward, degree by degree, the amount of pressure, the amount of weight that equates to for our neck becomes exponentially larger. So let's look at the average head is about 10 to 12 pounds. So that picture on the left side of the screen in a nice upright position where you can see the center of the ear fairly well in line with the center of the shoulder, that would be a good anatomical position. When we start to tip to go forward just 15 degrees, that same head of 10 to 12 pounds is now putting about 27 pounds of pressure on the spine at the base of the neck in particular. If we go 30 degrees forward, now it's like that same head, didn't get any smarter, no heavier with any extra brains, is now like lifting 40 pounds. We go 45 degrees, it's like 49 pounds. And then 60 degrees, quite far forward, which if you have any teenagers in your life, you've definitely seen the 60 degrees, is like 60 pounds of pressure at the base of the spine. And so this abnormal and exponential increase in strain on the joints of the spine is largely what causes the symptoms associated with tech neck. And we can also see similar effects when we engage with perhaps a computer or laptop, a desktop or a laptop in front of us, where our head needs to come forward. I'll show you from the side, so sort of forward this way. And then often with a computer, we're coming forward and then tilting our chin up this way. That can have some other consequences for the top of our neck, but for the bottom of the neck, we still end up in that same substantially increased load position. So tech neck gets its name because the position that technology tends to pull us into tends to cause us pain in the neck. So who's at risk for tech neck? Well, anybody who is, again, spending a lot of time on prolonged computer work, and especially laptops. A real problem here with laptops is that because the screen and the keyboard are attached to each other, either the keyboard is going to be too high or the screen is going to be too low. And they can't possibly, if you're using the keyboard that's on the laptop, you can't possibly be in a good position for both your neck and arms. And because it's not very comfortable for us to type like this, we tend to put the laptop down on a desk and our arms are in a comfortable position, but then we have to look down and forward at the laptop, and that will create the strain in the neck. Also, as was in that last picture, if we're spending a lot of time or a prolonged period on smartphones or tablets, and so this can be texting, it can be emailing, it could be reading, right, using your Kindle, it could be playing games, even doing things that are really good for brain health, like crosswords and Sudokus and those sorts of things that you can do on your tablet. Is great for brain health, but may not be great for your neck, depending on the position that you have that tablet in. Also, if you're a video gamer, this picture always cracks me up a little bit, but if you're a video gamer, again, because people tend to, especially in video games, tend to be really engaged in what they're doing, we tend to go into that forward lean position again, which again increases the pressure where the neck attaches to the spine. And then also at the bottom here, I've got old tech. So things like drawing, writing, or playing board games, if you've ever found that those kinds of activities also cause you to start doing things like this, grabbing onto your neck, maybe rolling your neck around a little bit. Often, again, where our head is in that forward held downward position, and we've got that increased strain. So although it is called tech neck and technology is definitely a culprit, you can get old tech neck from non-technology associated activities like drawing, writing, playing cards, and playing board games. How would you know if your symptoms are associated with technology? Well, I mean, one of the things can be if you notice that you start getting symptoms when you are on your phone, on your tablet, on your computer, there's a high likelihood that that is what's going on for you. But also some of the symptoms that people experience most often would be a stiffness feeling across the shoulders. So, up in through here and in through here, and maybe even right along sort of here where your collar sits on your shirt, or where the end of your ponytail is if you've got a long pony. And you can also experience headaches because of the tension that the muscles build up in here to try to support those joints. That can actually cause you to have a tension headache. You might also have, I don't have it on the list here, you might also have jaw pain. And definitely pain in the middle and lower back. This is one, so the lower back certainly could be a piece of it. Pain in the middle part of the back or near the shoulder blade is often a sign of tech neck that I think really gets missed a fair bit of the time. So sometimes your neck might not actually hurt, but you've got quite a bit of pain right underneath your shoulder blade here. Almost feels sometimes like somebody's just like a stabbing pain is how people describe it, and that it's just deep and they really can't get at it. Feels good if you sort of massage it out, but it doesn't really solve it. That is often a symptom of too much pressure and load in the joints in the neck. and it just causes you to have symptoms further down in your back. But it's not actually a back problem, it's a neck problem. Also, when we have pain and stiffness, headaches, that can really cause us to have a lack of energy. So if you're feeling like you've had a bit of time with technology, you've been at the computer for a little bit and you're a little sore, you may also feel like your energy level is just not as it would normally be. And that can be a consequence of tech neck. And then for sure, as we have these joints that are irritated and these muscles that are irritated, we can see that there's reduced movement in both the neck joint, so our ability to turn side to side, for instance, and then also the shoulders. So our ability to sort of get the arms moving as they would normally be able to do. The muscles that are most affected by this condition include the upper trapezius muscle, which is the muscle right up here in sort of what we would call like the yoke of the neck. They're the muscles that shrug up this way. And when we're engaged with technology and our shoulders lift up, they tend to get tight. They come up and attach right up in here. They definitely can be a culprit for headaches as well as for jaw pain. The pectoralis major is actually our chest muscles. And this is because when we're engaged with technology forward, our body tends to, shoulders come up and they come forward, and the space at the front of our chest gets smaller. And so then these muscles across the front of the chest start to get shorter or tighter. And that can then be part of what restricts the shoulder movement, which then creates more pressure in the neck and causes the problem to continue over and over again. The rhomboids are muscles that exist right between the shoulder blades, so just in the back right here. And those muscles are some of the muscles that are responsible for squeezing our shoulder blades together in the back. But again, when we end up in that forward position, they tend to be stretched out for long periods of time. And that's a really difficult position for them to be in. So those muscles can often get sore, or they can also, again, have some trigger points in them or a little shortened pieces of muscle tissue as a result of what's happening in the neck and the way that it sort of activates that muscle because of the nerves. And then the erector spinae are the muscles that hold us in an upright position. So if we're in that forward bent position, engaging with our technology this way, you can imagine that those muscles, again, are in a really lengthened position, just like the ones in our back. And that can be a very difficult position for them to be in for a long time. When, for instance, if you think of how your legs feel, if you were to try to hold a squat position for a long time, your quad muscles, when you're in the bottom of the squat in the front of your thigh, they're in a lengthened position. So that's part of what makes holding a squat a really difficult thing to do. So when your neck is in a forward position like that and really lengthened out, those erector spinae, or those spinal muscles that hold us upright, for them, it's like being in the bottom of a squat and trying to hold it for a long time. They just can't, they don't have the endurance to do that comfortably. And so they get tight and sore as a result. The joints that are affected by tech neck, again, they're going to fall in these same areas. So we can have our neck and back pain are going to be caused by neck and spinal joints. So that can be all the way from where your skull meets your neck, right down to where your neck meets your upper back, and then certainly through the upper back joints as well. And when those joints are affected, again, we can get the neck and the back pain as well as the headaches. Also, I mentioned with the tightness in the muscles, we can certainly have the jaw joint be affected. So it might be difficult and painful to chew, might be difficult to fully open the jaw. And again, that's can be as a result of the tension in the soft tissues related to that tech neck position. In the upper back, those upper back spinal joints, again, they can become stiff and irritated, and that can cause us to have both back pain in that upper sort of middle back and up area, and also maybe pain over into the shoulders. And then the shoulder joints themselves can also be affected, because if we're in this forward bent position and our pec muscles in the chest are tight, then like I say, our arm joints just can't move normally. And as a result of that, we'll tend to get some pinching, and that can give us even rotator cuff pain in the shoulders and pain down into the arms, just because of the muscle tightness that's developed because of tech neck. So as you can see, even though we call it tech neck, it can affect a lot of different parts of your body, just as a result of that position that we put the neck in when we're using technology, or that we sometimes put our neck in when we're using technology. So that's a little history on sort of what tech neck is, which muscles it primarily affects, and which joints it affects. And we're going to move on now into talking about prevention. And I love this quote because it really resonates with me. So Joyce Sonata said it, and if you don't take time for your wellness, you will be forced to take time for your illness. We all have really busy lives generally. And sometimes when it comes to things like exercise, sometimes it can get put to the side a little bit. But if our body really needs certain exercises or activities in order to continue to be well and feel well, it's so important that we find the time to prioritize that. Because if we don't, we will eventually be forced to do that kind of work because we are going to develop some kind of problem, right? Whether it be a chronic condition or a new acute injury, or something, again, that's maybe doesn't have as dire a consequence as some of the things, but just this muscle tension and soreness that makes you less likely to enjoy your day and get out there and do the things that you like to do. So again, I just think it's so important to remember that if we don't take time for our wellness, our bodies will force us to take time for our illness. So best to do the work at the front end and feel well. So what can prevent tech neck? Well, hopefully this won't be, from what I've talked about already, it won't be a huge surprise, but postural awareness is really important, right? So we need to think about the position that we're in. And I'm going to go through each one of these in detail in a moment. So I'm just going to give you a little overview here and then we'll go in. So awareness of our position is important. Strengthening of the appropriate muscles is really important. Making sure that we have both muscle and joint mobility can be helpful. So we don't want to have unnecessary stiffness. And so important that we remember to have frequent position and activity changes, because oftentimes the activities that we try to do are muscularly demanding, right? I often talk about posture like a marathon, right? Just because you can get into the right position, just because I can run across the road, doesn't mean that I can hold my position all day. I can't necessarily run a marathon, even though I can run across the road. And even though I can get to the right body position for sort of, I'll say, quote unquote, good posture, then it doesn't mean that I have the muscular strength and endurance to hold that position all day long. So when we give our body frequent position changes or changes in activity, even if they're brief, oftentimes that's just enough reset for those muscles to be able to feel rejuvenated, the joints to feel like they can handle a little bit more stress, again, while you continue doing that first activity. So let's look at each one of these just a little more specifically. On the postural awareness piece, so sitting tall is the thing that we want to think about. And I think once I get to the end of this presentation, I think we might go back through and try a couple of these things as a group if you'd like. But I'll just go through it this way for now. So sitting tall means that you really want to think about almost like you've got a string attached to your sternum or your breastbone, pulling up at about a 45-degree angle so that it just allows you to set your shoulders back, and your sternum then is pointing up towards the where your ceiling and your wall meet, right? It maybe not directly up there, depending on how high your ceilings are, but up in that direction. So we definitely don't want the breastbone pointing down towards the ground. It needs to be upward tilted. Once we're up like that, you should feel that naturally gives you a little bit of inward curve in the spine. Then we want to think about tipping the chin just ever so slightly down. And a really great measure here is taking a fist and putting it, the fifth knuckle of your hand, just at the bottom here, with your thumb on top. If you put your fist underneath your chin so that your thumb is touching your chin, your fifth knuckle should be able to touch where your collarbones come together. It's called the sternal notch right there. So you put your fist in, hold that position. When you do that, then when you take your hand away, ideally you should be in optimal posture. Then we want to think about having a little bit of deep abdominal engagement, just so that you're supported through your trunk, and then making sure that those shoulders are just sitting down on that rib cage on the back and aren't sitting forward like this. So again, just as a recap, you're going to sit tall through the sternum. You're going to allow that to give you that inward curve in the back. Chin tucks down just a little. Belly muscles are active. And then the shoulders are just set down and back along the rib cage on the back. So that is the position that ideally you want to spend as much time in as you can reasonably do, and building endurance there as you can. A really great quick posture check to see how close you are to getting to that position is to do what's described at the bottom here. So you just stand with your back against the wall. Your feet will have to come out a few inches just to make space for your buttock, so you don't feel like you're arching to get back to the wall. So you step with your feet out a few inches, buttock touching the wall, shoulder blades touching the wall, and then keeping that chin in that good position. Are you able to get the back of the base of your skull here touching the wall without looking up? And a lot of people will be surprised to find that that's actually a really difficult position to get to. And so that is an indication that doing a little bit of mobility work and a little bit of strengthening might go a long way to helping you feel more comfortable when you're engaging with technology. Because if you're able to be in a better position, there's going to be less strain on those joints. The next piece on prevention is daily strengthening. And the good news is, I usually say to my clients, if you break a sweat during these exercises, we need to have a conversation. So they are not meant to be really, really strenuous, right? These muscles are endurance muscles. They need to just have a little bit of tension in them, but for a long time. So when we're doing the exercises, it's not about giving it everything you've got. It's really about engaging the muscle, holding a position for a period of time, gently releasing, and then engaging again. I've broken it out into 4 different exercises here. Of course, there are many different exercises, and I would always recommend, for sure, if you have any history, these are generally very simple and gentle exercises, but if you have any health history that makes you unsure as to whether or not this is a good idea for you, then don't do it without talking to your healthcare provider. But these 4 exercises can be a really nice jump off point for getting going on a bit of strengthening. The first 2, excuse me. The first 2 are specifically for strengthening your neck muscles. The first one there, listed as a chin tuck, is really just the action. So this lady lying down on her back, you can't see her legs, but her knees would be bent so that her lower back isn't sore. She's just going to be in this position, and with your head on the pillow, doing just a very gentle nod, taking your chin down towards your throat. But notice I'm not doing something that looks like this, and I'm not lifting away from the pillow, because that would actually take me into my tech neck position, which is not the intention. So what you want to be doing is just a little nod. Sometimes people even talk about it. The imagery always makes me chuckle, but if you imagine an axle going through your ears side to side, and your head is going to spin on that axle just like a spit. So it's that action, right? You can see how that would work. So that is the action that we want. It's not looking down, which would be a different kind of rotation, right? So that gentle nod position you would hold for 5 seconds, and you do maybe 5 or 10, between 5 and 10 repetitions when you do these during the day, maybe in the morning, maybe at the end of the day. The other exercise in the same position, and basically if somebody was looking at you, they'd have no idea that you were doing 2 different exercises. So in the head press exercise, you're going to do the same basic position as the chin tuck. So you go into the tuck position, but then instead of just holding there, then you're going to very gently press your head back into the pillow to activate the muscles on the back of your neck. And these are the ones that hold your head up so that it doesn't drop forward. So once you're doing that little imprint, that tiny pressure, so you're not trying to dig a hole in your pillow, you are just trying to leave maybe the imprint of your head in the pillow as you do that exercise. Again, hold for about 5 seconds. You're going to do 5 to 10 repetitions. Neither one of these exercises should be painful. It shouldn't cause you to have a headache. It certainly shouldn't cause discomfort down into the shoulders. If you had any of those things, it would definitely be a reason to not do it and to check in with your healthcare provider. But they are great, although simple, really nice exercises for getting in touch with those muscles. And then when you're doing your postural awareness through the day and you're just thinking about your position, you're able to really call on those muscles to turn the right muscles on to support your neck and spine. The bottom 2 exercises are more about back strengthening for the larger muscles in the middle part of our back. So the first one is just squeezing our shoulder blades together in the back, just like I've done there. So sitting nice and relaxed, and then I usually like people to have their hands on their lap, and then you're just going to squeeze your shoulder blades together in the back as though pinching a pencil between the shoulder blades along the spine, and then release forward. When you do this, you want to hold for about 5 seconds. It usually feels really good, and it doesn't need to be as far back as you can possibly go. Just maybe 3/4 of your range, feeling the work in your middle back, holding for 5 seconds. And again, here you might do maybe 10 to 15 repetitions, maybe a few more. It's really important when we do this exercise. Remember at the beginning, I talked about the upper trapezius muscle up here that tends to get tight with tech neck. So when we do a shoulder blade squeeze, these are really good helper muscles. Sometimes they'll try to turn on and help us do the exercise, which will actually make our symptoms worse instead, or bring our symptoms on instead of preventing them. So with the hands relaxed on the thighs and squeezing those shoulder blades together in the back, it can be helpful, maybe even to do it facing a mirror so that you can watch to make sure your shoulders aren't coming up, that they're just pulling back. And again, that breastbone is sort of upward tilted, not pointed down towards the ground. The last one on our list here for strengthening is back to what our posture check was. So standing at the wall. So just in that posture check position that we talked about before, where you step your feet out a couple of inches, have your bottom and your shoulder blades touching the wall, and then tuck the chin, trying to hold that position, maybe bringing the back of the head towards the wall, but it may not touch. And then once you're in that position, you just hold it for 30 seconds. And that is shockingly difficult a lot of the time. And you should feel all kinds of work up and along the middle part of your back and into the back of your neck. But again, it shouldn't be painful, just muscularly tiring. And so you might do 1 or 2 repetitions of that one. And sometimes I'll even have people build up to 60 seconds eventually, but usually I start somewhere between 15 and 30 seconds, depending on how it feels. So that is our strengthening. Now, mobility. Mobility is an important thing when it comes to prevention of tech neck, but I'm going to talk first about range of motion as opposed to muscle stretching particularly. So range of motion really just means moving our joints, whatever joint it is, through the available movement in that joint. So in the neck, for instance, I really love to have people practicing chin down towards their chest, feeling a nice stretch up the neck. So it's different than being on our technology hanging here. We're tucking the chin down and lengthening the muscles, the back of the neck. At the end of my day, frankly, it feels pretty good. It feels nice to do that. I feel a big pull up the back of my neck. The next movement that can be helpful for the neck is just doing a rotation, again, in the range of motion that is comfortable, but not painful. So if it hurts a little bit when you go all the way to the end, then don't go all the way to the end. Just do the movement that you feel you can do. For the shoulders, range of motion, really nice to do a shoulder roll. Or maybe, or in addition, maybe doing some overhead lifts. So taking the arms up and over just like this. I had a client not too long ago who I was asking to do this exercise, and he said, well, but I never do that. And I said, great, that's exactly why we need to do it. Because our joints are built to move and they love movement. When we're not giving them movement, things get stiff and it tends to cause problems. And that was what was happening for him. In fact, tech neck was really what he was struggling with. And then, so as far as stretching goes, stretching in particular is going to be lengthening of specific muscles. So we're going to try to target one specific muscle to lengthen it. And muscle tension can be reduced when we use these sorts of techniques, and that can improve positioning and comfort some of the time. Massage therapy can also be helpful for lengthening muscles. And this is important because oftentimes, especially if we have currently or have in past had symptoms of tech neck, sometimes getting into the position required to stretch the muscle is more than the joints are willing to do. And although it feels good when we stretch the muscle, it actually irritates the joint underneath and makes the problem worse instead of better. So I'm not going to go through specific stretches here because I do find that what is the right thing for people to do is really individual. And sometimes I have seen lots of people who, with good intention, have started doing stretches that can be good for one person that are really contributing to the problem for the next. So when it comes to stretching, if you're feeling like basic range of motion and the strengthening piece isn't enough, then I would really recommend, I'm biased as a physio, of course, but I would really recommend connecting with a physiotherapist to find out what the right stretches for you are based on the muscles that are tight for you and what any other issues with any other joints that you have. So that was all about prevention. So those are all strategies that you can use if you don't have symptoms of tech neck. Sometimes, even if you're doing those things, it's not enough, right? Sometimes those symptoms still come on, and maybe if you're here tonight, you already have symptoms of tech neck, even though because you hadn't ever realized that that was what you were experiencing. So let's talk about what you can do once you have symptoms. So the good news is all of those things that I talked about prevention, they're all helpful still. So there's nothing on that previous list. Postural awareness, frequent position changes, strengthening exercises, massage therapy, all of those things continue to be a great idea for treatment as well as for prevention. I would say postural awareness and position changes take an even bigger role in importance if you already have symptoms, because I often with pain use the analogy of picking a scab. So if you have an area that's sore and you're continuing to do the activity that causes the soreness, it really for your body will behave like picking a scab that's trying to heal. And so we all know if we pick a scab over and over again, it just takes that area, it will eventually heal, but it takes it a lot longer and it's typically a lot less pleasant along the way. So with posture and tech neck, if we can be aware of our position and change our position frequently to take that stress off the area, then we can stop picking the scab and it makes it easier for those symptoms to settle down a little faster. Other little tricks that I find are good tech neck first aid are icing. So oftentimes people will go very quickly to using heat because the muscles feel tight, but especially when the joints are irritated, which in my experience is most of the time, icing is actually a really helpful way for the muscles to not feel so tight. So you're icing the joints to settle the inflammation and irritation. And then because there isn't the inflammation and irritation at the joint, then the muscles won't be so sore. And they won't be so tight and they'll be able to relax. So I usually find icing is a good idea. And I usually recommend 10 or 15 minutes at a time, 2 to 3 times a day at least. And interestingly, when it comes to the neck, often with if you are using heat or if you use an ice pack, often people will put it on and then sit, and the weight of that ice or heat pulls you forward into the tech neck position. So I love people, if you've got symptoms of tech neck and you're using ice or using heat, although I would recommend ice, I recommend people do it lying down so that you're getting all the pressure off those joints and giving everything a little bit of a break from that stress, in addition to the benefit of the ice. A TENS machine can also be helpful for people. So TENS stands for transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation, which really just means through the skin electrical nerve stimulation. Those are the little units that you can have at home. Dr. Ho made his famous. And so they are in no way a problem solver, but they can be a symptom reliever. So sometimes using that can be helpful to just get some symptom relief. The other thing that can be helpful are topical pain relievers. So Voltaren is a topical anti-inflammatory. For some people, that or other topical anti-inflammatories Diclofenac is one that can be prescribed by a physician. Sometimes they can be helpful, particularly in my experience with my clients where the joints are concerned. Maybe it's a little bit more helpful than the muscles themselves, but definitely some people find those to be helpful. The other kind of topical pain reliever that can be helpful are the ones that just behave like a sensory trick. So they kind of work the same as the TENS machine, which has that little tingly feel. One of the products we use here a lot is called BioFreeze. And there are a number of different ones out there, but it really just tricks the nerves to feeling the sensation of the ointment or the gel rather than feeling the feeling of pain, because our brain can only, our spinal cord can only send one message to our brain at a time as far as what we're feeling. So it's why if you hit your knee on the coffee table, the first thing you want to do is rub your knee. And for as long as you rub your knee, you seem to not have a sore knee. Well, that is because of the same phenomenon where the feeling of rubbing your knee travels faster than the feeling of pain. So as long as you keep rubbing your knee doesn't hurt. And the topical pain relievers work the same way. So if you put a little bit of BioFreeze on your neck, that will just distract your brain from the pain that's there. So we still need to be being posturally aware, maybe using our ice, strengthening our muscles, all of those pieces. But sometimes those topical pain relievers can just help us be a little bit more comfortable when things have gotten a bit out of control. Muscle strengthening, same exercises as I was talking about before, and many more. Those are just the sort of starter exercises, but they typically, muscle strengthening is a really big component of resolving tech neck symptoms. And you'll note that I didn't put stretching here. And again, that is because in my experience, so many people end up trying to stretch out their symptoms of tech neck. And it actually ends up making things more sore as opposed to better. Now, there are exceptions to that for sure. But I haven't seen scenarios where these strategies that I've talked about tonight create problems for people when they're done properly. Whereas stretching, I have seen be an issue for people and be something that we stop doing, and then people's symptoms actually improve. So unless you've had specific healthcare direction about stretches that are good and appropriate for you, I would fully advocate for moving and range of motion, just not the stuff where you're really sort of holding long periods of time. So that's my bit on stretching. So the takeaways from tonight are that tech neck is very preventable and very treatable. But strengthening the neck muscles is a real key factor in both the prevention and the treatment of tech neck symptoms. And there are so many self-management strategies that are available to help limit symptoms and optimize comfort and health. The trick is just knowing about them, which hopefully you are feeling a bit more confident with now, and then putting them into action. And so again, in a moment here, when I close out this part of the screen, I'm happy to go through any of those exercises with you and take any questions that you might have about them so that you can maybe try a little bit of those on your own at home. The other thing that we can do for you here, and Bill alluded to it at the beginning, is that there are a number of different ways, again, that you can build strength and stability to keep doing the activities that you love. And one of the things that we really believe strongly in here at Zoomers is our Clubs Ed Fitness program, which is a supervised workout program that's been developed and led by physiotherapists. And because of COVID, we had always offered fitness classes here, but because of COVID, we moved everything online, which people who had been coming in for a year said, oh, can you promise us you're never going to take away the Zoom option? Because I love doing my workout at home. I'm getting the same results and I don't have to drive. And so that's been a great thing for us. And it makes us really excited to be able to reach out and help more people to stay active and avoid the symptoms of tech neck and the other issues that creep in when we don't have the strength, balance, and mobility that we know it can help us optimize our quality of life and keep us doing all the things that we enjoy doing. So we're thrilled to have an offer for all CARP members, and Bill will send it out in an email that goes out later this week as well. But the promo code is CARP 2023. And with that, it will give you 50% off the cost of one of our memberships that would give you 5 live classes with physiotherapists, every month, and it would apply to your membership through the summer. So get you right through until September of this year. So keep your eyes out in your email for that. Happy to answer any questions about what that program looks like. We've got lots of different levels of ability, including a seated chair class that we've just recently added in, right up to classes that we've got pickleball players and golfers doing to improve their agility and their swing on the course. So yeah, happy to chat about that if you've got any questions, and watch for the promo information in your email. So again, thank you so much. My name is Laura Lundquist. I am here from Zoomers Physiotherapy in Halifax, and I will open it up for questions.
There are a number of questions and some comments, Laura, in the chat, some of them around, what about things like doing needlepoint, jigsaw, embroidery, those kinds of activities.
The old technique.
Yes.
Or the non-tech technique. Yeah, so again, it's all those activities that are in that forward position, right? So I have my my phone here beside me, and so I'll show you just with a phone, and then we'll talk about how that could maybe translate into some of those other activities. Obviously, a jigsaw puzzle we can't really get up on the wall unless it's got Velcro or something on the backside of it, but with the phone, so again, a lot of people will end up with their phone down like this and their head down like this, right? So what we want is to have people actually hold their phone more up like this, so that you can be in that chin tuck position, looking straight ahead at your technology this way. Or if you're using a tablet, that you've got it up high on a stand on a table in front of you, so that you are in a good position. I don't very often show the tricks of the behind the scenes here, but as you can see, hopefully today, when I've turned to the side, I've been in a pretty good technology position. I was very conscious of that today as I started. I'm going to show you what my desk because I'm on a laptop, right? Remember I said a laptop is always going to be either at the wrong position for your arms or the wrong position for your neck. So here is what you've been coming to me on top of the laundry hamper and a box, in order for me to get you up to the right height so that I don't go home with a sore neck tonight. That would not be a good sign for a tech neck presentation, right? So the key is, if you're going to do something like needlepoint, if you can have it as much as possible as you can bring it up. Remember, the angle is, in terms of the strain, it's exponentially worse as we come forward. So even if you can come partway up, it still might not be all the way up, but if you can come partway up, that might be the difference, right? The other thing is, again, depending on what you're doing, if you've got a recliner and you can recline back and hold the thing in front of you with your arms pretty relaxed, that's another way that sometimes you can do the activity that you might otherwise be bent forward doing, with having your neck in a better supported position. The other thing is, typically, a neck is not going to love a challenging position for more than 15, maybe 20 minutes. So if you can give yourself a break before you feel like you need it. So you're in a challenging position, do an activity for 10 or 15 minutes, go to the kitchen and get a glass of water. Just get up out of that position. Sit back down, do another 10 or 15 minutes. Then you probably need to take a trip to the bathroom, go to the bathroom, right? Thanks to the water trip last time. So do something to give yourself a cue or a reminder to get up and move every 15 to 20 minutes. And that often can help you stay a little bit longer, more comfortably. Jigsaws are a huge problem because it's just down so low, right? So I don't have a great solution there other than frequency and breaks. And again, using some icing maybe to just sort of, and doing some strengthening, right? Now, strengthening is a long game. It takes muscles 6 to 8 weeks at least to make one clinically significant strength gain. And you might actually need your neck to make 2 or 3 clinically significant strength gains to have more tolerance for something like jigsaw. But you might find that that would make a difference. It's just that you have to stick with the program while you build that strength, right?
Another question similar, but I don't know how we lift this one. But what about gardening? That's a bend over activity a lot.
It is, but gardening is actually easier than in many cases. So it kind of depends on what you're doing when you're gardening, right? But a couple of things. If you can work in raised beds, that's amazing, right? If you have a choice to work in a raised bed, that's a great way to not have to be bent forward a whole lot. I would also, again, as long as you can reasonably and comfortably get down, I would get down and work on your hands and knees as opposed to trying to lean down and forward, right? And if you're down on your hands and knees, you want to be really close to what you're working on. So you might get a little muddy, you might get a little leafy, depending on what you're working on, but really getting in close to it so that you can have your chin again in that sort of tuck down position this way as you're working, and you don't have to get out forward like this, because that's the real killer for gardening, right? Is when we have to look forward and we're pruning and we're picking, right? And that chin poke up is a real problem. That's where a lot of the headaches and the jaw pain come from.
Great. Well, that's all the questions we have, Laura. So I want to thank you very, very much. Remind everybody that this has been recorded. You will be sent a copy of the link to the recording, probably early next week. It takes us a while for us to edit them and render them. But also you will, before that, get a copy of the PowerPoint that Laura used tonight, so you can refer to that. And that has the information on the offer that Laura is making, and that will be there for you too. And I would also remind you that this will also be on the CARP Nova Scotia website when it's ready, and also we'll put it on Facebook on both the national and Nova Scotia CARP Facebook pages. So, and we're happy to have you share this with your friends and family. The more people can see it, the more people will be able to prevent suffering from tech neck. So lots of thank yous in the chat to you, Laura. Thanks a lot to everybody for watching. And Laura, I'll give you the last word.
Wonderful. Yes. Thank you so much. Great to be here. I hope nobody goes home tonight or stays home tonight with tech neck. I've been talking for 50 minutes. So get up and move around, do a little bit of range of motion. If you're sore, get your ice pack out, but do it lying down. And remember, a little bit of strengthening in particular goes a really long way to help with these things. So, if you've got neck soreness that bothers you and you haven't tried strengthening, give it a try, because it really is shocking sometimes how just a little bit of work can go a long way to helping you feel better. And then you can enjoy all the things you love to do.
Great. Well, thank you on behalf of CARP members across the country. Thank you, Laura Lundquist.
All right.
Bye,
Bye.
everyone.